Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Larry Parks Show. This is the Extreme Consumer Advocacy Show, and I'm Larry Parks. Tonight I'm going to be talking about the attack on retirement savings. I did a show a few weeks ago, the attack on pensions, but tonight I'm going to be talking about how the financial guys are really attacking the money itself. By way of introduction, this week I went to a conference that was sponsored by Investment News dealing with retirement savings. And it was a sensational conference over a 2-day period. The organizers from Investment News did a bang-up job. But one of the things that happened there was enormously shocking and disturbing to me. And this has to do with the way your retirement money is managed. And as you're going to see in just a few minutes, the financial folks have gotten our so-called, and I mean so-called, elected representatives to write into legislation rules, laws in effect that mismanage your pensions and in effect could destroy not just your pensions, mismanage your retirement savings and in effect could destroy all of your retirement savings. And so when it comes time for you to retire and collect, it may turn out that you will get pretty much close to nothing at all. Let me start off with the first slide. This slide shows the amount of money in the retirement assets in the United States. There's roughly $14 billion. Come back to me, please. Of that $14 billion, maybe a few $1 billion are in self-directed IRAs. And I'm not talking about self-directed IRAs tonight necessarily. A self-directed IRA is money that you've put in some kind of government-approved savings plan. It's generally with a broker like a Smith Barney or a Goldman Sachs or a Merrill Lynch, and you say how to invest the money. There are limitations on how you can invest the money in your IRA. So, for example, you're not allowed to buy gold in the IRA because the trustee just won't allow it. So they want to limit the money to the capital markets. And the reason why the Wall Street guys want to limit the money to the capital markets is because they get fees from money that's invested in the capital markets, and they want to keep the valuations up and growing. And that's what the so-called privatization, really privatization of Social Security is about. It's not like the guys from State Street Bank or Citibank or American Express are worried about the savings for ordinary people. What they're worried about are their fees. So the presentation at this conference that I went to that got me so upset, there were two presentations, one for a fellow from T. Rowe Price, which is a major firm, and the other one from Mass Mutual. These are very large money management firms with many billions of dollars under management. The audience was almost entirely investment advisors. These are small advisory firms who either work for a fee basis, sometimes on a flat fee basis, sometimes on a fee based on the amount of money they manage, who manage the retirement savings for ordinary people. And it turns out that the guys, the folks making these presentations, started off with some assumptions which they really didn't specify were assumptions. They just sort of like put it out like this is what is. And then based on these assumptions, which you'll see in just a moment, are totally bogus, they apply mathematical formulas and develop a whole series of rationales about how to allocate your money into stocks and bonds. So the key numbers for you to remember for this little bit is 3, 6, and 9. They assume 3% inflation, 6% return on fixed income assets, that's bonds, and 9% return on equity. And based upon these assumptions, and also based upon what they call modern portfolio theory, and I'm going to have a lot to say about that in just a moment, they develop all kinds of models about how you should allocate your money. And there's all kinds of scenarios. They use advanced mathematics called Monte Carlo simulations to come out with a whole bunch of results in order to give people comfort that they're going to be able to get their retirement savings. So in other words, what I'm saying is that these folks use totally bogus assumptions, wrap these bogus assumptions in questionable mathematical formulas and mathematical procedures in order to develop scenarios to give ordinary people confidence that their money is being invested wisely when in fact their money is not being invested wisely And in fact, the motivation of these firms who do the investing is just fee generation. And I'm going to have more to say about that in just a moment, too. Now, let me talk a little bit about how they've legislated this boondoggle for themselves. Last year, the Congress passed something called the Pension Protection Act. This Pension Protection Act really should be named the Wall Street Revenue Act. It has nothing to do with protecting pensions. That is just spin. The real guts of the act is to legislate procedures that are guaranteed to generate fees for Wall Street. And foremost among these procedures is something called accepted practice. In other words, the people who are managing the money have to use accepted practice. What is accepted practice? Accepted practice is stuff that's blessed by the experts. Who are the experts? Well, the experts are the economists and the consultants that they hire to testify that this is accepted. So in other words, they give prizes, they give honorariums, they give awards, they give endowed chairs to experts, and then those experts come in and say, yes, what these people are doing is terrific. The system that is that they believe to be most terrific is something called modern portfolio theory. And this was developed by a very brilliant mathematician. His name is Markowitz, and he actually received a Nobel Prize for this modern portfolio theory. And this modern portfolio theory is the basis upon which the bulk of roughly the $14 trillion in retirement assets is invested, and is really the basis upon which the $145 billion of the New York State pension money is invested. So it's very important that you get a grasp on how bogus this so-called modern portfolio theory is. It's based upon really two assumptions. The first assumption is that the prices of securities are normally distributed. Normal distribution is a mathematical concept, and it really comes out of nature. The idea is, so for example, if you looked at people's heights and you plotted the heights from the smallest height to the tallest person, you'd find that there'd be some kind of bulge in the middle. Put up the next exhibit, please. This is an example of a normal curve, and it's very well behaved mathematically, and there's a whole bunch of characteristics based on mathematics that we can determine from this curve. Now you notice that the ends of the curve are pretty much on the bottom axis. That's called the x-axis. And the height between the x-axis and the curve, that's a measurable probability of whether or not an event will occur at that particular ordinate. Come back to me, please. So these people who develop this modern portfolio theory, they postulate or assume, or whatever you want to call it, that stock prices are distributed according to this curve. Now that is a false assumption. And the reason being, for events to be normally distributed, they have to come from a universe of statistically independent events. In other words, in order to use these probabilistic concepts, you can't have bias in the system. You can't have people operating on the events. They have to be, you have to have a large universe, say like people's heights, that are statistically independent. Stock prices are not statistically independent. They are affected, and you'll see greatly affected, by things that people do. And in fact, rather than have events where at the extremes are very unlikely, mathematicians have found that in a lot of cases, in real life, for example, that stock prices have what they call fat tails. Now go to the next chart, please.